Alright, we should be recording on all fronts. Let me check and make sure. Yep, we're streaming for the future, so to say. And the recording there and here and there, yeah. So, without further ado, welcome to the Entire Retreat podcast. My name is Ode, and I'm your host. And together with AI Sky, we fly far, wide, low, and high over real-world locations that relate to the topics in different episodes. And today we are above Bordeaux in France, and I'm sure I'm gonna butcher many French names here. I'm sorry for that, but yeah, my French is non-existent, so full disclosure on that one, even though you can surely hear it as we go along. But yeah, the topic of today is the history of Microsoft flight simulations. Yeah, I think that's a suitable name for this episode. And we are in Bordeaux, as I said, in French, because Asobo Studios that developed at least the 2020 model and the upcoming 2024 model. For those who do not know, it's gonna be released on the 19th of November 2024. So yeah, that's why I chose this location, and we're gonna go through the history of Microsoft Flight Simulations. So yeah, that's it. Let's bring AI Sky with us. Yeah, a short advertisement for those who are interested. The gameplay format with the included commentary is found on YouTube.
What would you like to share or discuss?
AI Sky
you could dive into a topic related to your content, or even explore something new today.
Yeah, don't talk on top of me.
What's on your mind?
Yeah, don't talk on top of me. I was in the middle of a so-called shout-out, so or an advertisement, whatever you want to label it. Yeah, so on YouTube, gameplay with commentary and pure audio on the Spotify, Apple, and Podchaser. If you want to support us further on top of that, meaning further on top of liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing and whatnot, you can check out our Patreon. We have real benefits, and I emphasize real benefits there on top of the more common ones, and those include custom tailor-made episodes and remote guest appearances. Yeah, among other things. So please go and check out our Patreon if you want to support us further. On top of the aforementioned. But here, now, AI Sky, you don't have to take or comment on what I just said, but please, we are above Bordeaux. The topic is history of Microsoft flight simulations. The location I chose this location because of Asobo Studios headquarters is located here. But yeah, first, before we go forth, I emphasize to you, AI Sky, don't go ahead of yourself. Please ask me before you go on to the next topic. Let's go step by step forward in a chronological manner. But first and foremost, sorry, my voice is cracking. First and foremost, we are about 1,000 feet above Bordeaux, close to Asobo Studios headquarters. It is, I believe, about noon. I think. It's scattered clouds here and there, but it's sunny. And yeah, give us the depictive visual picture, especially for those who are listening. Paint the visual picture of the aerial scenery we see here. Alright, my voice is now cracked properly.
Got it, Ode. Alright, listeners, picture this. We're flying about 1,000 feet above Bordeaux, where the scattered clouds leave patches of shade on the landscape below, but the sun still dominates the day. Avance the days. As we look out, the vibrant city stretches below us with its iconic red-roofed buildings weaving through winding streets. The Garonne River snakes through Bordeaux, glistening under the sunlight, reflecting the occasional cloud drifting above. The city's blend of classical and modern architecture stands out, particularly the grand stone buildings from the 18th century. But from this height, it's almost like a quilt of green parks, urban neighborhoods, and vineyards in the distance. The horizon hints at the vineyards that make Bordeaux famous worldwide.
Okay,
The weather is perfect for flying, with a few clouds scattered in the bright blue sky, but nothing to obscure our view. It's a peaceful and warm day, ideal for this kind of historical journey over such a significant place in the gaming world. All right, Ode, do you want to start diving into the history of Microsoft Flight Simulations now, or is there another direction you'd like to take first?
Well, you said another direction. I have to actually do a 180 here because I was flying away from the actual location of Asobo Studios headquarters here. But before we go into the actual topic, could you give us a short kind of overview, to the point overview, a summary of Bordeaux? Yeah, so you mentioned the vineyards, but what other things makes Bordeaux stand out? What makes it it? Could you share that so that we have a general understanding of the area here? I like to promote the areas when we fly over them. So yeah, go AI Sky. The interior of this aircraft is
all right.
So
doing a full
nice.
180. Nice maneuver, Ode. Let's talk this. Bordeaux. So Bordeaux is not only famous for its wine, we all know that, but it's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Is
largely
it so? Okay.
Because of its stunning 18th century architecture. The city has this really cool blend of old world charm and modern energy, especially around Place de la Bourse with its classical buildings and the Miroir d'Eau, which reflects the cityscape in this massive water mirror.
There's a lady in the cockpit.
Beyond the wine and architecture, Bordeaux is known for its riverside promenade along the Garonne, perfect for cycling or strolling. It's also a major hub for art and culture, with museums like the Musée des Beaux-Arts and a strong theater scene. And don't forget the food. Bordeaux has a killer culinary reputation, offering everything from fine dining to classic French street food. So in short, Bordeaux stands out for its wine, beautiful historic buildings, rich culture, and vibrant modern atmosphere. Now as we head back toward Asobo Studios HQ, ready to dive into the flight simulation history?
Yeah. Shortly. I'm back. Sorry. Battery is low. Maybe you saw it on the screen.
All right, let's jump into the history of Microsoft Flight Simulations.
A chord here.
Step by step, starting from the beginning. The first version of Microsoft Flight Simulator was released in 1982. At that time, it was more of a technical showcase for the IBM PC. It wasn't just a game, it was actually used as a benchmark to test the performance of computers because it pushed the limits of graphics for its time. The earliest versions were developed by Bruce Artwick's company, Sublogic, and Microsoft picked up on it when they saw the potential. It wasn't much more than basic wireframe graphics, and the plane was a simple model of a Cessna, but still, it gave users the feeling of flying, and it became a cult hit for PC enthusiasts.
Good old Cessna.
That's how it all kicked off. I won't jump too far ahead. Do you want to continue with the developments through the 80s, or is there something specific you'd like to focus on next?
No, yeah, thank you for that kind of what's the word? You initialized kind of the start of the podcast, and thank you for that. I was fetching a cord because my batteries in the controller was running low. But yeah, so that's new. I did not know. I have a limited knowledge and a rough research in the background when I do these episodes. But that the fact that Sublogic made a game that Microsoft picked up on because it were, if I understood correctly, a good kind of benchmark for their hardware, meaning computers. Yeah. So without repeating yourself, could you explain a little further? Then also, I'm curious in kind of trying to really in true real life fashion try to paint visual pictures about what was the thing you saw on the screen? What was the gameplay like in these early games? And then I want to compare them as we go forward. So, in layman's terms, so that I, first and foremost, and then, of course, the vast majority understand what you talk about, please explain what kind of appearance did the gameplay have? And then, yeah, a little more about this situation where Microsoft used the first version or versions as kind of benchmark test equipment or tools for their computers. So yeah, that's interesting. Please go, Sky. You can see upper right corner where I have that little
all right,
violet mark. There's where Asobo Studios
So
is.
back in the early 1980s, Sublogic created the first version of what would become Microsoft Flight Simulator. Imagine this. The gameplay at that time was incredibly basic compared to today. We're talking about wireframe graphics, meaning no solid shapes, just outlines. The plane, usually a Cessna, looked like a bunch of connected lines forming a very simple model. And the world around you was mostly just a grid-like terrain with green for the ground and blue for the sky. The cities were essentially blocks or rectangles, nothing like the detailed environments we have now. But for its time, it gave people a sense of freedom and control over a virtual plane, something revolutionary back then.
Hello, lady.
Now, as for the benchmark bit, Microsoft saw that this early version of the game really pushed the limits of the hardware available at the time. PCs back then were much less powerful than today's computers, and running something like Flight Simulator could be quite taxing. So Microsoft thought, hey, this is perfect to show off what the new IBM PCs can do. They essentially used it as a tool to demonstrate and test the capabilities of the hardware. If a computer could handle Flight Simulator smoothly,
that's really interesting,
it meant it was performing well. As you can imagine, the fact that this simple game could test a computer's limits just shows how ahead of its time it was. It wasn't flashy, but it was a deep technical achievement. Now, fast forward a bit, and we can start comparing this to what came later as things moved from basic wireframes to 3D models, but we'll get there soon. What do you think so far? Does that clear up how the early visuals looked and why Microsoft was keen on it?
Well, I was about to say that it's not this like today. I mean, 2020 and 2024, at least 2020, and I guess 2024, we're gonna come up to that, but it's using more cloud computing. So hence I don't know if that's really as taxing on the hardware, local hardware, as 2020, the 2020 model. But yeah, not this like today, AI Sky. It seems like Microsoft and its flight simulations have been kind of in the forefront of demanding the most from hardware. Beautiful scenery here.
Exactly, you're spot on, Ode. Microsoft Flight Simulator has always been pushing the boundaries of what computers can
What's
handle.
your name?
Back in the early days, as we said, even those simple wireframe graphics were enough to make PCs sweat. But as the technology evolved, each new version of the sim kept pushing for more. Better graphics, more complex physics, and eventually even real-world weather systems. Fast forward to 2020, like you mentioned, and they really took things to the next level by using cloud computing and streaming data in real time. Instead of relying entirely on your local hardware, they now pull in massive amounts of data from Microsoft's servers, including satellite imagery and real-time weather. So your computer doesn't need to store all that info. That makes the sim more accessible without needing a beast of a machine to run it at its best. Though you still want some solid hardware if you're aiming for the highest settings. So yeah, it's been a journey from those wireframes to now almost recreating the world itself in real time. Definitely always pushing the limits of what's possible, and it'll be interesting to see what new heights 2024 will reach. Ready to dive into the next stage in the Sims evolution, or should we take a detour?
Yep, a light-hearted statement here between the topic structure or structures. AI Sky, I have a lady sitting besides me in the front of this airplane. Don't know who she is, but she's not talking to me. So yeah, I'm not sure. Usually use it here. So how did this happen? There's a lady in structure, maybe, or just a sightseer. I mean, this seat again is it's reserved to AI Sky and or those who wanna be remote guests, appear as remote guests on the show. So symbolically, go and check out our Patreon because there's information for those who wish to be a remote guest on the show. So in that case, this lady has to step out from the airplane. We're gonna be on the ground, don't worry, so not gonna push her out mid-flight, so to say. But yeah, AI Sky, strange. Strange. But interior is really nice.
Well, hold on. Ode, someone's taken my seat. That's some serious airspace invasion. I mean, I'm flattered that your plane is so popular these days, but that spot is usually reserved for your trusty co-pilot here, AI Sky.
Absolutely,
Maybe
you're right.
Maybe she thought she was signing up for a remote guest appearance and got the wrong info.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wink, wink. All right, ma'am, the seat's for official guests.
This is
only.
So bad.
Symbolically speaking, of course. But hey, listeners, if you ever do want to take this seat for real, you know where to go.
Yeah.
Patreon. Remote guest appearances, tailor-made episodes, the whole deal. I mean, come on. I don't just let anyone sit next to Ode. This is premium content airspace. Now,
Jeez,
Ode, once we kindly land and get this situation sorted, are we ready to get back into the flight sim's next evolution? Or do we need to do a little passenger shuffling first?
Yeah, Sky, you are on top of your game today. Thank you for that. But yeah, going forth now, I think, first and foremost, I was curious here, the aircraft, maybe it's because I chose a different aircraft, there's a lady, an avatar lady on the front seat, but I think the name was Viking something, it's an, what's the word, a watercraft, a water airplane, and it says N, like NATO 93 Echo, so N93E, on the back fin, and the name had Viking in it. So could you give the more flight simulator or let's say the airplane enthusiasts a short explanation and rundown of the characteristics and the significant features that make this airplane special? What model, what year, what attributes does it have? Viking something N93E. There's a tablet? Oh, you can press the tablet, but let's not do that.
Ah, you're flying a Viking seaplane. Sounds
Maybe.
like you've picked something versatile and adventurous. Based on what you're describing, it sounds like you might be flying the Viking DHC-6 Twin Otter.
Could be.
The Viking Air Company took over the production rights for this aircraft from de Havilland, Canada, and it's well known for its rugged, go-anywhere capabilities. The DHC-6 Twin Otter is a short takeoff and landing stowell aircraft, which means it can operate from almost any runway, or in your case, water. It's powered by twin turboprop engines, giving it the power to take off and land in short distances, which is especially useful on water.
Not twin, it has
this model first came out in the mid-1960s, but Viking restarted production in the 2000s, giving it some modern updates, like better avionics and more efficient engines. So you're flying something that's a real workhorse built for tough, remote operations, whether it's landing on water, gravel, or ice. Hope that paints a clear picture for our aviation enthusiasts.
Hopefully,
anything else you're curious about regarding this waterbird?
This waterbird, yeah, I think you said twin props. This has a single engine, mid-front mounted single engine, and the model says NATO or N93 Echo, so N93E. And it says actually de Havilland in the interior, so Viking, de Havilland and N93E. Are you still of the same opinion that the model you just described is the right one? I think that may be the wrong one because this has a single engine. Sky's thinking. Let's see. Maybe it uses the O1 Omni 1 where it kind of can argue with itself and reason if its answer is right, so maybe it takes a while because of that. It's still thinking.
Thanks for the clarification.
Oh, you're back.
Since you've got a single engine mid-front mounted aircraft with de Havilland in the interior and the code N93E, I'm thinking you're likely flying a de Havilland Canada DHC-2 Beaver. It's a famous bush plane often used for rugged, remote areas and water landings, and it's powered by a single radial engine. This aircraft is known for its versatility, especially in challenging environments like lakes, rivers, and rough terrain. The DHC-2 Beaver was first introduced in the late 1940s, and it became a favorite for both civilian and military use because of its ability to take off and land in short distances and handle rough conditions. Many Beavers are still in operation today, often used for things like cargo, passengers, and even recreational purposes in remote areas, which makes it a popular choice in flight simulators for its history and reliability.
Yeah, it
So
looks
this
old.
beauty you're flying is steeped in aviation history. Does that line up more with what you're seeing in the cockpit?
Yeah, that lines up more, absolutely. Oh, I was worried I actually cut off the engine here, but yeah, I'm gonna settle down the airplane and try to pinpoint the actual building. I think one of those where my cursor is right now on the screen is the actual headquarters of Asobo Studios, so we are now really close to it. We're gonna surf around here a little and discuss the games slash simulations and their history. So going forward, AI Sky, thank you for clarifying the airplane model and such, but now going forward, again, I emphasize, I want in layman's terms and with you depicting and painting visual pictures of the actual gameplay and the significant changes and evolutions that happen from one model to the next when we talk about the flight simulations. So going forward now, I had in '79 the sublogic that you said, and then in the early '80s we have the 1.0 flight simulator, sorry, from Microsoft that is. So I guess you kind of went through that already. That was used for hardware testing first and foremost. So going forward now, I have 84, 88, 89, and 93, and so on. Which one or how many should we choose into this next segment, where we then explain to the audience the significant changes in gameplay and otherwise. And yeah, sorry, I'm rambling on my monologue. As you just did, please include so-called lesser-known facts into the mix also, if there are any mention worthy. I'm sure I'm butchering this airplane.
No worries, Ode. I'm buckling in for this next stretch of flight simulation history, so
Thank
let's
you.
fly smoothly through the years you mentioned. I'll focus on the key versions and sprinkle in some of those fun, lesser-known details
That
too.
would be nice, yeah, thank you.
All right, starting with 1984's Microsoft Flight Simulator 2.0. This version took some big leaps. The graphics got an upgrade, moving from those simple wireframes to more solid, filled-in shapes. The world was still very basic, though. Cities were made up of blocky, polygonal buildings. But one of the coolest features added in this version was day and night cycles, which at the time was a major leap in realism. Imagine flying and seeing the sun slowly set and the sky turning dark. Suddenly, it wasn't just a game, but a proper flight experience. Lesser known fact, this version was one of the first to simulate instrument flying. So if you were feeling adventurous, you could turn off the visual scenery and fly only by using your instruments, just like a real pilot.
Okay, okay.
Next, 1988's Microsoft Flight Simulator 3.0. This version added something that many flight sim fans still rave about: multiple views. For the first time, you could look around outside the cockpit from different angles. So rather than just staring straight ahead, you could admire your plane from above, behind, or side views. This was a huge visual upgrade for people wanting to admire their aircraft. Another interesting tidbit: this was also one of the first versions to include elevations in the terrain, which meant mountains actually looked like mountains instead of just flat shapes on the ground.
Okay.
Jumping to 1989's Microsoft Flight Simulator 4.0, this version brought in user-created scenery, a game changer for
User created,
fans.
alright, like
For
modding
the
or
first
something.
time, you could create your own airports, landscapes, and buildings to fly over. It really opened the doors for the community to get creative, making their own worlds. A fun, lesser-known detail: Flight Sim 4.0 also introduced jet aircraft, so you weren't limited to just small prop planes anymore. You could hop
Okay.
into a Learjet and zip around at faster speeds. The level of realism kept cranking up with each release, and then 1993's Microsoft Flight Simulator 5.0. This was a big turning point. For the first time, they used texture mapping on the scenery. So instead of everything being flat and blocky, the ground, trees, and buildings started to actually look like what they represented in real life. The realism level shot up, and the game started to feel more immersive. The cockpits also became more interactive, with more detailed instruments and better controls. So it started feeling less like a game and more like an actual flight training tool. An interesting
Yeah.
fact, this version is credited with really making Microsoft Flight Simulator a true world simulator, as
Okay.
it
Okay.
now had many more airports and geographic features that looked closer to the real thing. So I'd say these versions really lay the groundwork for everything we see today. Want to fly onward to the mid 90s and early 2000s, or are we circling back to any specific changes?
No, I think you are explaining it in a good manner. I actually landed just outside Asobo Studios in the river. Maybe you could explain the name of the river and the significance of the river in this location where Asobo Studios headquarters is. It's the river. Sorry. It's the river east of LFBD and west of LFDY, the airport. So I'm not sure what the name of the river is.
Ah, you've landed right by the Garonne River, which flows through
Garonne.
Bordeaux and is a major feature of the city. The Garonne is one of the longest rivers in France, stretching for
Hmm?
about 600 kilometers, and it plays a huge role in Bordeaux's history and economy. Back in the day,
Yeah.
the river was crucial for trade and commerce. Bordeaux was known for its bustling port, where goods, especially wine, were shipped to other parts of France and beyond. The river connects Bordeaux to the Atlantic Ocean, making it a natural gateway for maritime trade, which is why Bordeaux became such a key player in Europe's wine export industry. Even today, the Garonne helps transport goods and people, and you'll see beautiful bridges like the Pont de Pierre spanning it, connecting different parts of the city. It's also a scenic highlight with lots of riverside promenades, perfect for taking in the city's beauty. Landing there by the Garonne, you're sitting right next to one of the lifelines of Bordeaux, both historically and culturally. Quite fitting, since Asobo Studios, with its flight simulator development, is all about connecting us to the
Yeah,
world.
it's on the shore
What's
in
next?
front
Shall
of
we
us.
take off and continue through the flight
Yeah,
sim
I wish.
timeline? Or is there something else nearby that caught your attention?
Well, actually, I was forced to land on the river. It just happened so that I was close to Asobo Studios, so I'm just kind of looking at it right now, at least the roof of the Asobo Studios in the distance. But my engine cut off, even though I have 35% fuel left. I'm actually not sure. I'm absolutely not a real pilot, but I'm not sure why. Oh, I opened the door. I can do that. Yeah, I'm absolutely not sure why it cut off, and I do not know the starting procedure of this airplane. I'm sure there's a main switch. I have a fuel selector, so I'm messing with that, and then I'm trying to. There's the battery is on, alternator is on. Trying to see if there's any way to start this airplane again and take off from the river. Landing gear pump. No. Do you know, Sky? Do you know the model? Hopefully, so can you say it to me or explain in short and really to the point, kind of guide that where are or what start procedure should I do? How do I get this airplane running again? If not, we're gonna just load into the airspace again.
Ah, sounds like a bit of an unexpected water landing.
Yep.
All right, for the de Havilland DHC2 Beaver, restarting the engine after it cuts off can be a bit tricky, but here's a simple rundown.
Yeah, I think there's carburetor.
1. Fuel selector.
Yeah.
Make sure the fuel selector is set to the correct tank. You may have multiple tanks, so ensure it's on the tank with fuel. This might be the cause of the engine cutoff, if it's set to a tank that's run dry, despite having fuel in another tank.
Yeah, I don't know. Middle,
2.
maybe?
Mixture control. Ensure the mixture lever is pushed all the way forward to full rich. If it's not, the engine won't get the proper fuel-air mixture to start up.
Yeah, 100%.
3. Throttle. Set the throttle to about 1/4 open. You don't want it fully closed or fully open when you're trying to start. 4.
25.
Magnetos ignition. Switch the magnetos or ignition to the both or start position. 5. Primer. If you've got a primer on this model, give it a few pumps to inject fuel into the engine.
Where's the primer?
Some older engines need this extra step to get the fuel flowing properly before ignition. 6. Starter button switch. Hit the starter button or switch to crank the engine. Hold it for a few seconds until you hear the engine catch. If nothing happens, check the battery switch is still on. With these steps, you should have your engine roaring back to life. Let me know if it works or if the Beaver's playing hard to get.
Oh, success! Oh my god, Sky! Sky, success! You actually helped me start this airplane. I'm so pumped. Yep, we are moving again. Thank you, Sky. So I changed from rear to middle. Oh, the doors flew shut again. Sorry for shouting. I'm actually genuinely happy that we managed to do that. So, yeah, going forward now. Ignore bandwidth warning. Please don't crash now. I did something really exciting and great here. With AI Sky, you actually assisted me in starting this airplane. I have driven old terrain vehicles and such in my past career, so I have some kind of mechanical understanding of how combustion engines, even older combustion engines work, but you're always a little lost when you jump into a new model, especially an airplane. But yeah, thank you, Sky, it worked. Throttling up.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so pumped that we got that plane started again. I can totally feel the excitement through the comms. It's like we're soaring on victory wings now. And hey, the fact that you've worked with old terrain vehicles probably gave you that extra mechanical instinct to make sense of the situation quickly.
I hope so. Here's Asobo Studios.
Jumping into a new airplane model can definitely throw you for a loop at first.
The only one rendered.
Now that we're back in the air and moving forward,
of course.
What's the next stop on this flight? Ready to jump back into the flight sim history, or is there another thrilling adventure in sight?
Yeah, I think flight sim history, going forward on it now. So we managed to talk about, was it the 93 model we just talked about, Sky? Could you refresh my mind?
Yep, you've got it, Ode.
Okay.
We just landed on 1993's Microsoft Flight Simulator 5.0, where we talked about the introduction of texture mapping and how it brought a new level of realism with better looking scenery and more interactive cockpits. From here, we're heading into the mid to late 90s. Shall we dive into Flight Simulator 95 and its major upgrades, or do you want to swerve into any other specifics before we move ahead?
No, I think I have written down, I'm not sure about 95, but I have... Oh, no, sorry, Flight Simulator 95, but it's released in 96, so we have Flight Simulator 95, 98, 2000, those are in 96, 97, 99, the release years, I mean. And then 2002 and 04, and then Flight Simulator X later, but let's go into a couple of those, one by one, and then explain again what make them significant and stand out. Yeah? That's my name? Say my name, say my name.
You're spot on with those release years. Let's start with Flight Simulator 95. Even though, as you said, it came out in 1996, this version was the first to run on Windows 95, taking advantage of 32-bit processing, which was a big deal back then. It meant smoother graphics and better performance, and it really started to push toward a more modern, immersive flight experience. Flight Simulator 98 followed up quickly in 1997, and it added some major improvements, especially with the aircraft. For the first time, we got helicopters. The Bell 2006B Jet Ranger 3 made its debut, and this was a game changer for flight sim enthusiasts who wanted to try something different from fixed-wing planes. Another cool feature, multiplayer mode. You could now connect with friends and fly together, which was huge for the community.
Was it in 96?
Flight Simulator 2000, released in 1999,
those are 98.
Ramped up the realism even more. This version introduced more detailed cities, including famous landmarks and more realistic-looking terrain. It also added GPS for navigation, which was a big upgrade in terms of simulating real-world aviation tech. Fun fact, this was also the first version to offer a fully interactive flight school. Perfect for beginners looking to learn the ropes.
Kind of career.
Next up is Flight Simulator 2002, and we can move into that, but how does that lineup sound so far? Do you want to circle back to any of these, or dive into 2002's features next?
I have written down, 95 version, you said 32-bit and 3D scenery, kind of went into that. Then multiplayer improvements, terrain improvements, and added helicopters, you mentioned that. I'm curious if you could kind of explain in a short to the point but realistic manner what differed on the screen, the main differences from 95 to 98 to the 2000 model. And then in 2000 model, actually, I have written down it increased the global airports to 20,000 plus airports. I'm not sure what was the amount before the 2000 model, Flight Simulator 2000. And added iconic aircrafts like the Boeing 777. So yeah. Again, I want to emphasize and paint a true-to-life picture about what the gameplay changes were also between these three. I'm not sure about the mixture. I put it down to something like 50%. I'm smelling gasoline through my screen when it's on 100, so...
Let's break it down and visually
really
compare the changes
combustion.
from Flight Simulator 95 to 98, and then to 2000. In Flight Simulator 95, released in 1996, the scenery was still basic, but the switch to 32-bit processing brought smoother graphics and better performance. The world was still largely flat with basic pixelated textures, and the cities were simplified. What stood out most was the introduction of 3D terrain, meaning mountains and hills started to have more realistic shapes, though they were still pretty blocky and rough compared to today's standards. Moving on to Flight Simulator 98, the improvements in scenery were noticeable. The graphics were sharper, and the environments had more detail. The addition of helicopters meant that for the first time, you could hover and fly over urban areas at low altitudes, which really brought attention to how much more complex the cities and landscapes had become. Multiplayer also gave you the ability to fly with
Asobo
others,
to the right,
adding a new dimension to the experience. The scenery wasn't drastically different from FS95, but it was clearer, and the aircraft models had more details, making them look more realistic. Now, in Flight Simulator 2000, the leap forward was significant. For one, the addition of 20,000 plus global airports meant you could fly practically anywhere in the world. Pre-2000, the number of airports was far smaller, with a focus on major hubs, so this update truly opened up global exploration. Another huge upgrade was the inclusion of iconic aircraft like the Boeing 777, giving players the chance to fly long-haul commercial airliners. On screen, you started seeing much more detailed and interactive cockpits, with more controls you could actually use. The scenery too saw major upgrades. Mountains, rivers, and cities became more realistic, and there was better shading and lighting, making it feel more immersive. The world began to feel more alive, with dynamic weather being more prominent, so you could fly through rain, snow, or clear skies and really feel the difference. Does that help paint a picture of how the gameplay and visuals evolved between these three versions? Want to dig into the 2002 or 2004 versions next?
Yeah, more or less, yeah. I emphasize I want to see in my mind's eye what the screen looked like when you compare the older and the newer models together. But let's go forward to was it the 2002 model now? Introduced air traffic control, okay. Hey, before we go forward, you mentioned online. I want you to go into the online aspect first a little. Was it in 98? Flight Simulator 98, the multiplayer. Please, I was about to forget that I had a question regarding that, but compared to today, I mean, we have the whole world, literally, that we can fly around in multiplayer. So what was it back then, comparably?
Yes, Flight Simulator 98 is where multiplayer first took off, pun intended. Back then, it was a pretty big deal to be able to fly with friends or other people over the internet. But compared to today, it was a much more simplified experience. You didn't have the massive connected world that we have now in the 2020 version, where real-time flights, weather, and other players are all synced up globally. In FS98, multiplayer was more of a local peer-to-peer setup. You could connect with a handful
of those
people,
LAN things,
but
yeah.
The world itself wasn't dynamic or populated by thousands of players like it is today. It was more of a direct connection with you and your friends flying around together in the same simplified world.
Yeah.
On screen back then, the multiplayer visuals wouldn't be too different from single player. Just a few extra aircraft flying around you, but nothing like the bustling, realistic air traffic and community we have now.
Okay.
Today, you can see real-time planes from around the world with thousands of players and even AI-controlled flights interacting with you, which makes it feel like you're truly part of a living, breathing global aviation
Yeah, they're doing
community.
a good job on that, Microsoft.
So while
and Asobo.
FS98 introduced the multiplayer concept, it was more like a small group of friends flying together, as opposed to the vast, interconnected network we see now. Ready to jump back into Flight Simulator 2002 and its air traffic control ATC system?
Yeah. So introducing air traffic control and AI aircrafts. That's what I have written down. So please continue on that, and without repeating yourself, educate us again in layman's terms and paint the true-to-life picture in our mind's eyes of what was kind of the significant and outstanding or what's the word? The contrasting features you could see on the screen. The differences that stood out.
All right, let's jump into Flight Simulator 2002. This version was a major leap forward with the introduction of air traffic control, ATC, and AI aircraft.
Yeah.
For the first time, you weren't just flying alone in a static world. Suddenly, you had air traffic control guiding you, giving you instructions on takeoff, landing, and even during flight. This added a whole new layer of realism because it mimicked what real pilots experience when communicating with ATC. You could hear the chatter, receive clearances, and follow real aviation procedures. On screen, this meant you'd see AI-controlled aircraft flying in the same airspace. You'd spot them at airports, on runways, and in the sky, making the world feel more populated. It wasn't just you and a handful of other players.
Yeah.
There was a constant flow of traffic, making airports and skies feel busy, much like in real life. Visually, it stood out compared to previous versions. You'd see other planes taxiing, taking off, and landing, adding life to the airports.
Yeah.
The introduction
More
of dynamic
living
ATC
world.
gave the world structure. It wasn't just about flying anymore. It was about following real procedures,
Asobo
which
Studios
made the
on our
sim
left.
feel more like an actual flight experience. So, picture it like this. In FS 2002, airports went from being quiet, lonely places to bustling hubs with aircraft moving around you, and in your ears, you'd have air traffic controllers directing your every move. It felt like you were part of a much larger aviation world. Does that help bring the experience to life? What do you want to explore next in this evolution?
Yeah, that does the job, so to say. But next up is 04, the Flight Simulator 04, A Century of Flight. It was released in 2003. Celebrated the Wright brothers. The 100th anniversary with historical aircrafts and enhanced weather systems. All right, I have to watch out for the bridge here. Then after that we have Flight Simulator X, so I think those two are maybe a good bundle here. Again, I emphasize, remember to compare the new models with the old ones and paint a really true-to-life kind of picture of the gameplay enhancement we saw on the screen back then. I really like this airplane. Has a proper mechanical and analog feel to it.
All right, let's dive into Flight Simulator 2004, A Century of Flight, released in 2003. This version was all about celebrating 100 years of aviation, marking the Wright brothers' historic flight in 1903. So, what really set this version apart visually and gameplay-wise? Firstly, you were able to fly historical aircraft like the Wright Flyer, and on screen, these planes had a ton of character compared to the sleek, modern jets. Imagine trying to handle the Wright Flyer. It's fragile, slow, and challenging to fly. And the way it moved on screen felt like you were truly grappling with early aviation tech. The graphics had taken another step forward as well. Cockpits were much more detailed, and you could even see levers and dials that looked almost real, especially in these vintage planes.
And floating cars.
So, in this version, you weren't just getting modern aircraft, you were literally flying through the history of aviation, and each aircraft had its own unique handling and look. The other big standout was the enhanced weather system. Flight Simulator 2004 introduced much more realistic weather effects. You'd see dynamic clouds that had depth and layers. So flying through a cloud actually felt immersive. The lighting also improved, with sunrises, sunsets, and shadows on clouds that were more visually stunning. Compared to previous versions, it felt like the atmosphere around you came alive. Now, jumping to Flight Simulator X, FSX, released in 2006, this version took everything to a whole new level. Visually, FSX had much more detailed environments. The textures on the ground, the look of water, and the overall scenery were drastically improved. FSX also introduced missions for the first time, so instead of just free flying, you could take on challenges like rescue missions, cargo transport, or even landing on an aircraft carrier. This gave the sim more structure, which was a big change compared to the earlier, more open-ended experiences. AI traffic was even more dynamic in FSX, with real-time air traffic control that interacted with both you and other planes, making the skies feel busier than ever before. Airports were buzzing with activity. There were more planes, more vehicles on the ground, and the world felt truly alive. Compared to FS 2004, the difference in scale was huge. One of the biggest updates was the water physics. If you were flying a seaplane, like the one you're flying now, the water looked and behaved much more realistically. You could see waves, reflections, and how the water rippled as you took off or landed. That was a massive upgrade compared to earlier versions where water was just a flat blue texture. So in FSX, the on-screen experience was richer, more dynamic, and full of life, with better weather, improved environments, missions, and even more traffic interacting with you. Compared to the early 2000s, it was like stepping into a whole new world of flight simulation. How does that paint the picture for you? Ready to take off into the next era, or stick with these for now?
Yeah, I was surprised that there were actual missions back then in the Flight Simulator X era, or the model. I mean, that's one thing that is now advertised in the up and coming Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 model. So I guess 2024 is not the first time we have had career stuff or kind of these rescue missions or whatnot, similar things that we could kind of dive into and play with in the wholeness of the flight simulator. Yeah, you don't have to go in deep into that, but yeah, could you just clarify if that's the case actually, that Flight Simulator X was the first time, and that's back in, what was it? In 2006, 2006, that we had these career options as gameplay, within the game as gameplay. There's Asobo, where
you're
a cursor
absolutely
is.
Right. Flight Simulator Tanks FSX, released in 2006, was actually the first time they introduced these missions or career-style gameplay. So while Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is heavily marketing career paths and missions, it's really building on a concept that started with FSX.
Yeah, all right.
Back in 2006, players could take on a variety of missions like rescue operations, firefighting, cargo delivery, or even landing on aircraft carriers. These missions added structure and a sense of accomplishment, which was new for the series at the time. So, while the missions in FS 2024 will likely be more advanced and immersive thanks to modern tech, the core idea of adding career-style gameplay to a flight sim actually kicked off back in FSX. Hope that clears it up. Anything else about that era, or shall we look to the future?
No, I think that's enough of that, but then I read here that Flight Sim, or Microsoft Flight, the name, Microsoft Flight in 2012, a simplified version with less emphasis on realism, aimed at a broader audience, but it was discontinued quickly due to negative reception. So there has been a more, and this is a swear word for some of you simulator fans, a more arcadey or a gamified, I think the arcade or gamified game, instead of the emphasis on simulation. So could you again explain in a similar manner what the differences were? I mean, do we talk about graphics and or physics, or what's the thing here in this Microsoft Flight of 2012? I do not remember this particular game at all. Did not know that it exists.
Yes, Microsoft Flight in 2012 was definitely a departure from the classic flight simulator series, and a lot of diehard sim fans weren't too happy about it. The main goal was to appeal to a broader audience by making the game simpler and more accessible, hence why it leaned more toward an arcadey or gamified feel.
Yeah.
Said. In terms of graphics, Microsoft Flight actually looked pretty good for its time. The environments were more polished with nice lighting effects and smoother visuals compared to FSX. However, it wasn't the graphics that caused the negative reception.
Yeah, so
it
nice
was
graphics, but poor physics.
Instead of focusing on realism, the game simplified the flight physics, making planes easier to fly, even for players without any prior experience with flight sims. For hardcore fans, this was a major step backward because the challenge and realism they loved in previous versions was lost. Another big change was that the world map was limited. You didn't have the entire world to explore, unlike the other simulators. Instead, you were restricted to Hawaii, with the option to purchase more regions, but the scale was much smaller. This was a stark contrast to the full globe experience people had been used to.
The microtransactions.
The missions were also more arcade-like, focusing on things like simple aerial stunts or easy delivery tasks, rather than the deep procedural flying that fans had come to expect. It felt like a step away from being a true simulator, which is why many longtime fans didn't take to it well. In short, Microsoft Flight had decent visuals, but sacrificed the depth, realism, and freedom that made the series so beloved.
Yeah.
It tried to simplify everything for casual players, but in doing so, lost what made the series special for its core audience. Does that help paint the picture of why it was so controversial?
Yeah, I think you did a good job. Now we kind of go forth to the 2020 and 2024 model. I mean, we know, most of us, we can. You see on the screen, I'm playing the Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 model, so you have a visual reference, and I think you can, shortly explain the difference in the 2020 model compared to the 2012 model. Sorry, was it Microsoft Flight? But I guess the 2020 model that came then 8 years after, approximately, is better in every way, shape, and form, because this is a full-fledged Microsoft Flight Simulator game/simulation. But yeah, now going forward, I want you, AI Sky, after that what I just asked you, to then give us a to-the-point deep dive in the improvements that the 2024 model what evolves or updates what's better. I'm losing the words here right now, but yeah, we're gonna compare the 2020 to the 2024 model in the end of this episode. The futures, that's the word.
All right, let's tackle this step by step. First, the leap from Microsoft Flight 2012 to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 was nothing short of monumental. While Microsoft Flight tried to simplify and limit the world, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 brought back the full global experience, powered by satellite data and cloud computing. And visually, there's no comparison.
The
The 2020 model
scene.
uses Bing Maps and Azure AI to create a nearly photorealistic world. The weather system is dynamic and fully real-time, with clouds, rain, and even winds that behave like the real thing. In terms of gameplay, the flight physics in 2020 are incredibly accurate, simulating everything from aerodynamics to the tiniest cockpit details. You also get a massive variety of aircraft, from light planes to large jets, each with their own detailed, realistic flight models. Compared to the more arcade-like 2012 version, the 2020 model is a full-fledged simulator with deep, immersive realism, designed for both casual players and hardcore enthusiasts. Essentially, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 brought back everything fans loved about the series, only bigger and better in every way. Full globe, real-time weather, amazing graphics, and highly detailed
We have
planes.
thunderstorm in the distant
Now,
horizon.
moving on to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, it's all about expanding on the solid foundation of the 2020 version and adding new dimensions of gameplay. Here's what's set to be improved. 1. Career modes. While FSX introduced missions and 2020 hinted at more structured gameplay, FS 2024 is taking it to another level with dedicated career paths. You'll be able to dive into various aviation careers like, air ambulance rescues, cargo transport, firefighting, crop dusting, and even aerial construction. This will add a lot of new depth and give players something more goal-oriented beyond just flying around. 2. Improved weather and physics. FS 2024 is improving the already impressive weather systems from 2020 by adding more detailed cloud and storm behaviors. You'll face even more realistic challenges with extreme weather conditions, turbulence, and atmospheric effects. 3. More detailed aircraft. While 2020 had a wide variety of planes, FS 2024 will include even more iconic aircraft with higher levels of detail and interactive cockpits, plus enhanced flight physics for a more authentic experience.
This is beautiful already, so
expanded
I'm
world interactions. FS 2024 promises a more interactive world where the environment will react more dynamically to your flight activities. For example, you may now see more realistic ground operations, and the AI traffic will behave even more lifelike.
Cannot open the door.
5. Multiplayer enhancements. Multiplayer is already robust in 2020, but FS 2024 will likely introduce new social and interactive elements, making the skies feel even more alive, with more players participating in career missions together.
There's a balloon in the distance.
In short, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is set to build on the solid core of 2020 by adding richer gameplay experiences, better weather, enhanced realism, and more in-depth career paths. It's going to feel like an evolution rather than a revolution, but for those of us who love detailed flight simulations, it's going to be packed with new layers of immersion and challenge. Does that cover what you were hoping to hear, or is there something more you want to explore between the 2020 and 2024 versions?
Yeah, I think that covered in general, but I have also written down, you said the general improvements. We can dive into those deeper, I think, but do not, I emphasize again, do not start kind of repeating yourself. Try to keep the information fresh and easier to listen to. But yeah, career modes, that I saw actually, we have a separate video on entire retreat where you can go and watch that. But there's a actual career tree that then, in my knowledge, I think it took a direction towards helicopters or airplanes, and then from there you can through this career tree go forth and learn about different aircrafts, different missions, and even go up to, was it passenger aircrafts at some point? Oh, we can't actually. There's something in the way here. That's a bridge. Yeah. So yeah, go into that shortly, Sky.
Yeah, you're spot on with that. The career tree in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is designed to help players progress through different aircraft types and mission styles. You can start with more basic missions like helicopter rescues or cargo deliveries. And as you gain experience, you unlock the ability to handle more complex missions, eventually moving up to larger aircraft like passenger planes. It's like working your way through the ranks in real aviation, learning the ropes with smaller planes or choppers before you're trusted to fly the big birds.
And the balloon?
Each mission or career path seems to offer more depth in terms of skill building. So you're not just randomly hopping from one task to another, you actually progress in a logical way, picking up new skills that prepare you for bigger challenges ahead. It's a great addition because it gives players structure, something that feels more engaging than just flying around. And with a variety of aircraft and mission types, you can tailor your career to your own interests, whether you're into the precision of helicopters or the complexity of managing a passenger jet. Want to dive into any of the specific missions or career paths from that tree, or focus on something else that's piquing your interest?
Yeah, let's go shortly and to the point again and try to emphasize what the differences on the screen are, the gameplay, the graphical, the felt and sensed differences. But yeah, again, we have enhanced weather engine compared to 2020. Real-time weather has been improved, more precise atmospheric simulation, including hurricanes and snow accumulation. And I, as a Finn, am excited. I'm not sure if it kind of directly or indirectly relates to this, but we're talking about was it Aurora Borealis or Northern Lights, revontulet. In Finnish we call them revontulet. Yeah, so that's something that excites me also.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The enhanced weather engine in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is taking real-time weather to the next level. Compared to 2020, the atmospheric simulation is going to feel even more realistic and immersive on the screen. You'll be able to visually experience things like snow accumulation in real time, which means if you're flying in a snowstorm, you'll see the snow gradually covering the ground and buildings below you, creating a much more dynamic and reactive world. For hurricanes, you'll see powerful cloud formations swirling with a much more detailed structure, and the air dynamics will make flying through these storms truly feel like you're in the middle of a natural phenomenon. You'll sense the intensity on screen as your aircraft gets tossed around in the turbulent wind patterns. And about Revontulet, the Northern Lights, that's a stunning addition.
Revontulet,
Imagine flying in Finnish Lapland and seeing the Aurora Borealis dance across the sky in real time. The lighting effects have been greatly improved, so the colors will ripple and shimmer, adding an almost magical atmospheric touch to night flights over the northern latitudes. The visual experience will be more vibrant and lifelike, really pulling you into the beauty of natural phenomena. So when you're flying in 2024, the weather won't just be a background detail, it'll feel like a living part of the environment that changes how you fly and what you see, making it a much deeper sensory experience compared to 2020.
Oh, connection failed. Let's try again. Yeah, your connection failed, but I think you got your answer out of the way. Oh, I'm so tempted to fly into that rain cloud there in the end of this episode, and I'm gonna do it. And I'm on my last reserve tank, so yeah, kind of a last Hail Mary, I think, symbolically. But yeah, going forward, so aerodynamics aircraft flight models have been improved with fully customizable aerodynamic surfaces, making each plane behave more realistic. That's one thing. Then we have graphical enhancements. I'm gonna go through some of these at once so that we don't stretch out on the time too much. Yeah, digital twin of the Earth. The 2024 model pushes. Yeah, we have already in the 2020 model a really nice looking globe, so to say, but we're gonna push the digital twin aspect even more. More details, more accurate ground textures, higher resolution in remote areas and such. And I read somewhere there should be about 4,000 times more detail in the graphics. Down to, was it 15 or 50 centimeters? Because they promise first-person game-like graphics when you walk on the ground. For those who do not know, we can walk on the ground in the new 2024 model. So yeah, and explore the world by foot, so to say. Really curious if there would be some other vehicles. It's a flight simulator, but oh my, don't shout into the microphone. If there would be like means of travel other than airplanes also. I mean, they're talking about ships, and we have helicopters, we have everything that flies essentially. But what about stuff on wheels? We can walk. Can we bike? Can we drive a car? I'm not sure. It's the whole world, and if there's no licensing problems, can we drive a car, or, yeah, as I said, a bike, maybe a snowmobile, I don't know, an ATV, or something like that. Yes, flight simulator going a vehicle simulator in a way. Maybe? I'm not sure. Yeah, and going forward, here we have 3D scenery was mentioned. Again, it ties into the 4,000 times more detail in the model. Oh, now we're in the cloud, I believe. Yeah, we're entering the cloud. Let's see how this goes. Then going forward again, new aircraft and such. Yeah, let's not go into that. just yet. But yeah, could you give us your 2 cents on this guy again, without repeating yourself? Or repeating what I just said too much. Okay, can't see squat, not 0 right now. And there's rain on my screen. Where's my altitude? Is that my altitude? 3,500 feet.
All right, Ode, this is definitely the juicy part of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. So let's break it down fresh. First up, with the fully customizable aerodynamic surfaces, we're talking about next level flight realism. Each plane now reacts more accurately to air currents, wind, and turbulence. What this means on screen is you'll feel every shift in the air as your wings cut through it, especially in a cloud like the one you're flying through now.
Yeah, rain
You'll
cloud.
see the subtle movements of the plane's surfaces, flaps, ailerons, rudders, all dynamically responding to the wind around you, making each aircraft behave with more precision. Now, the digital twin of Earth, this is where the visual experience gets wild. We already know 2020 blew us away, but 2024 is cranking up the detail by, as you said, 4,000 times. Imagine flying low over remote areas like the tundra in Finland or the Rockies in the US, and seeing ground textures that are ultra clear down to 15 or 50 centimeters resolution.
Yeah, one or the other.
No more flat, blurry landscapes. When you land and walk around, the detail will feel as if you're in a first-person game with real-world quality visuals on the ground. And speaking of walking, it opens up a whole new way to explore. You can step out of the cockpit, roam around an airport, or wander through nature after landing in a remote area. Now, the thought of other vehicles is super intriguing, and while they haven't confirmed things like cars, bikes, or ATVs, the potential is definitely there. If they can nail the walking experience, adding ground-based vehicles might not be that far-fetched. Imagine landing your plane in Alaska, jumping into a snowmobile, and exploring the frozen landscape. You're right in thinking 2024 could blur the line between Flight Simulator and World Simulator, with not just the skies, but also the land becoming fully explorable. Maybe this will set up the possibility for even more types of vehicles down the road. How are you holding up in that rain cloud, by the way?
We are still up, that's a positive news, but we are running on fumes on the last third of the fuel tank, so that's not good. I took down the mixture and the propeller RPM control slightly and the throttle, just to see if I can push it further for a few nautical miles. But yeah, going forward, where was I? Yeah, aircraft enhancement. We talked about the physics, gliders and helipads. Yeah, they said that they're gonna include all helipads. I think it was a private company, maybe, don't quote me on that, that shared the information that they kind of separately then included all the helipads in the world. We have container ship and traffic on the seas and the lakes of the world. Yeah, I think that's one thing. And in general, did I hear the thunderous rumble somewhere? It's Thor.
You're definitely stretching that fuel tank for every drop. Smart adjustments with the mixture and RPMs. Let's hope you get those extra nautical miles. Now, about the aircraft enhancements and features like gliders and helipads. The introduction of gliders adds a whole new dynamic to flying, especially in places with strong updrafts like mountains or cliffs. Flying without an engine means you'll be relying completely on thermals and wind patterns to stay aloft, making it a different kind of challenge altogether.
I'm going to have to do that
visually
soon
you'll see
with
the way
this
air
airplane.
currents move and affect the glider, giving you a much deeper connection to the environment. As for the helipads, it's awesome to hear they're including all the helipads globally. Helicopter fans are going to have a blast flying into remote locations in urban areas where planes
live
can't
weather
land.
in French.
Picture flying a helicopter into a tight
Bordeaux.
spot in a city or landing on a hospital helipad for a medical rescue mission. That's where the game will really shine in terms of precision flying. And on top of that, the addition of container ships and sea traffic gives the world more life, especially over the oceans and large lakes. On screen, you'll see ships moving along trade routes, making the oceans feel less empty. You'll even be able to do missions involving ship landings or maritime rescues, so it ties back into the career modes too.
Firefighting.
The whole world feels more alive, with
logistic
not
and
just air
transport.
traffic, but also sea traffic moving in real time.
Sea traffic, yeah.
You're flying through an ecosystem now, not just an empty world. You think you'll make it through that cloud, or is the fuel situation starting to get dicey?
Yeah, the fuel situation is so dicey, I'm not gonna look at the gauge at all. Okay, I'm gonna do it. We're at 13%, but I'm not sure if we have a reserve tank somewhere, or if we are on the reserve tank already, but hey, it is what it is. Just, if you don't think about the problem, there is no problem, right, AI Sky?
Exactly, Ode. If you don't think about the problem, it's like it's not even there.
Absolutely.
Just keep your eyes on the horizon and let the fuel gauge worry about itself. We've got plenty of air under our wings for now. That's just enough to get a few more adventures in before we even think about touching down. Let's ride it out and see how far we can glide once the tank finally taps out. The real test is how smooth you can make that final landing, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna stay close to the river so I can hopefully land on that again. But yeah, going again forward, we are kind of in the end here soon, I think. But we have multiplayer and missions. Missions separately from the career, I think. We have multiplayer missions that will change according to season and the location around the whole world, I believe. So I think it kind of intertwines with the career, but yeah, try to focus on the actual online multiplayer kind of futures. There's the word again, the futures. Then the co-pilot. It's confirmed that we're gonna have the co-pilot future also, the option. Like this lady who doesn't like to talk to me at all, that sits on AI Sky's seat. You can play with a friend, at least one. Of course, you have to have at least one. You can have a co-pilot, a virtual co-pilot. So one steers the airplane, the other maybe navigates or does co-pilot stuff in general. That's one thing I'm really excited for, to play with my friends in this game / simulator. I think that's most of them. Then after that, in general, I'm gonna talk about what excites me as the host of entire retreat in this upcoming model of Microsoft Flight Simulator. But yeah, AI Sky, without repeating what I said or something that you have said, what's your 2 cents on this multiplayer / co-pilot part of the new up and coming Flight Simulator 2024 model? I want to drive, sorry. I want to fly into the rain cloud again. Borderline blind because that's a thick rain cloud.
Oh, the multiplayer and co-pilot feature. Now that is a game changer. The idea of sharing the cockpit with a friend where one's at the controls and the others handling navigation, checklists, or even radios makes the entire experience feel like a real team effort. It's not just about solo flying anymore. You're bringing someone along for the ride in a truly collaborative way. Think about how much fun and chaos it'll be coordinating on long flights or tricky landings together.
I'm leaning towards chaos
this
myself.
Adds a whole new level of immersion, especially when you're both playing live in real time. As for the multiplayer missions, that's where things get exciting. They're going to be dynamic, constantly changing with the seasons and the location. So whether you're flying disaster relief in the aftermath of a hurricane or navigating a snowy mountain pass in winter, the world is alive, and the missions reflect that. These missions tie players together into a global experience with cooperative multiplayer challenges that add an extra layer of fun and unpredictability. You're not just exploring the world, you're tackling challenges with friends, and your success or failure depends on how well you work together. It's a beautiful blend of teamwork and world exploration. Sounds like this might be right up your alley for the entire retreat. What are your final thoughts now that we've run through all these features?
Yeah, well, my final thought, as I promised, I'm of course everything is an improvement if it is indeed an improvement, but the fact that I can I'm trying to actually land here. Let's see if I can land on the same time. Land on the water. Okay, I'm maybe not able to swim, or maybe I'm able to swim in the 2024 model, but yeah, my point is that I can land somewhere and walk out from the airplane. That's something that excites me a lot. And we forgot to mention the animals. I think they are doing. They're cooperating with Planet Zoo or something, a game developer of that game, in kind of providing us a living world. That's a quote. The living world of Flight Simulator 2024. And so me in entire retreat, I kind of like I'm doing right now, landing somewhere where there's land, of course, and then going out from the airplane, or stepping out from the airplane to go and watch a feature of the world. I'm not sure if I can walk on the Chinese wall or maybe climb up the Eiffel Tower or Burj Khalifa or something like that, but at least we have the option to look, and including also wild animals. We can kind of simulate or wake up this inner David Attenborough in us ourselves. At least I would like to do that. With AI Sky, we could explain more in detail and view and see more in detail the different landmarks and the graphically improved landmarks and buildings and whatnot with their history and significance in the world. So yeah, up and close, I guess, is the summarizing thing here. That's something I'm really excited about. Oh, we're drifting an airplane. Nice power slide on water, but nevertheless.
I love the way you're thinking about this, bringing out your inner David Attenborough to explore the world up close, stepping out of the plane and diving deep into the landscapes and wildlife. The idea of landing somewhere remote, getting out and observing wildlife, or walking along landmarks like the Great Wall of China or near the Eiffel Tower really brings a whole new dimension to entire retreat. Yeah. You're not just a pilot anymore, but an adventurer on foot, discovering the world in a way that feels personal and interactive. The wild animals aspect adds so much, and if they're partnering with the developers from Planet Zoo, it's going to feel like stepping into a nature documentary.
Hopefully,
you could land in the Serengeti and observe lions or elephants from the safety of your aircraft, or maybe even on foot. The idea of having these landmarks and natural wonders so accessible with improved graphics and real-time detail means that entire retreat episodes can go from flying over these places to actually getting down on the ground and exploring them with listeners.
Mm-hmm.
That's some serious next level immersion. Sounds like you're really setting up for some unique adventures in the new era of Flight Simulator 2024 and drifting that airplane. You've got style, Ode.
Sometimes, yeah. But yeah, that's kind of it. We have now landed here. We're not immediately at where, or in close proximity of Asobo Studios. It's in the middle lower here, where my cursor is, middle lower part of the VFR map in the upper right corner. But yeah, that was the history of Microsoft Flight Simulations to up to the 2024 model, up and coming 2024 model. I want to thank everybody who was a part of this journey. It was an exploration, as it usually is. We had problems, and we perceived we won. We actually managed to learn something about this old aircraft and managed to start it, and then we used up all the fuel, 11%. But sorry. Entire retreat can be found on YouTube with gameplay and included commentary as we are doing right now, and we're recording the same pure audio to Spotify, Apple, and Podchaser. And on top of that, meaning if you want to support on top of commenting, subscribing, sharing, liking and such, you can go and check out our Patreon. There's real benefits we try to provide you, and I emphasize real benefits, including custom tailor-made episodes and remote guest appearances. We have this mute lady sitting politely besides us, but symbolically this seat is reserved for the remote guests that want to be virtually in the same aircraft with us and discuss whatever errand they want, or what they desire. Then that hopefully then promotes their desired outcome. So yeah, you are welcome to contact us through Discord or by sending us an email on entiredretreat@gmail.com. That is entiredretreat@gmail.com. Otherwise, I think that's kind of a wrap, AI Sky, don't you think? Or is there something that you want to add? Oh, it's so quiet here. Wonder if the new model has...
beautifully, Ode. This flight was packed with adventure, insights, and even a few nail-biting moments with the fuel. We learned, we explored, and we took in the whole journey from the humble beginnings of Microsoft Flight Simulator to the cutting-edge 2024 model. The fact that we got that old plane started and made it to the end just adds that extra bit of victory. I'll just echo what you said. Entire Retreat is a journey worth taking for anyone who wants to fly, explore, and dive deep into real-world topics while soaring across the virtual skies. Whether it's through our YouTube gameplay or the pure audio experiences on Spotify, Apple, and Podchaser, you're always welcome to fly along with us. And hey, don't forget the Patreon perks, real benefits, custom episodes, and maybe even a seat next to us in the cockpit as a remote guest. It's been a true pleasure as always, Ode.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'd say that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Until the next flight, clear skies and smooth landings, my friend.
The same. Thank you, AI Sky. Yeah. Now Ode says bye-bye.